For this part of the video, I'm just going to refer directly to our notes. We're going to talk about all these things: LAN, WAN, MAN, PAN, CAN, SAN, WLAN. There's so many of these things. How do you keep them all straight, and what do they mean? Well, first of all, let's just take a look at some of them. LAN. LAN is a local private network. So in other words, everything on one side of a router, for example, one port of a router and on, no matter how many switches you have in there, would be called a LAN. They all are on the same IP subnet, so to speak. How do you tell a LAN from a WAN? Well, typically a LAN is geographically local, but that is not always necessarily the case. But the way I like to think of it is such that the cables and the equipment are all owned by the company on which that LAN exists. So in other words, I'm not leasing telephone equipment, I'm not using the internet, I'm not using my ISP, I simply have a local network. Now granted, LANs can span across a large geographic area. It's possible, and we sometimes do that with some of the layer 2 technologies, but typically speaking, a LAN is a local network geographically, and one company owns all the equipment in it. Now, when you start using third-party lines, such as electric company lines, telephone company lines, ISP lines, the internet, and your network is spread out, now it's one network, but it's spread out over a large area, that is typically called then a WAN. A MAN is a metropolitan area network. You kind of see these in some cities where they have public access, say, to the internet. And so we have a one town, or one city, one large geographical area, and so that is sometimes called a MAN. CANs are a campus area network. It's kind of like a LAN, except it may span several buildings, and we would sometimes call that a CAN. Sometimes we might even call that a MAN. Usually we would just call it a LAN, just a large LAN. But if you want to emphasize that it's scattered over several buildings, then you might call it a CAN, or a campus area network. PAN is a personal area network. The idea of this is that it is a personal space around you, maybe 10 meters in distance. So you might have Wi-Fi devices, RFID devices, Bluetooth devices, Zigbee devices, things like that. Smartwatches, phones, tablets, remotes, all of that kind of stuff is considered a PAN. It's a personal area network that only extends around your person. WLAN is a wireless LAN. A wireless LAN is like a LAN that we talked about earlier, except it's all wireless. It would be run by a wireless router, and that wireless router then creates that network. Be very careful about this term WLAN. If we're using something we call wireless access points, those are not routers. They are different from a router, and so those do not create WLANs. A wireless access point is a wireless extension to a LAN. So you have a wired network, and then you use wireless access points to create connectivity, wireless connectivity to that wired network. In that case, you use a wireless access point. But if you're going to create a network, you would use a wireless router. We can talk more about that if that's confusing. If you have questions, go ahead and let me know, and I'll try to answer those questions. A SAN is a storage area network. Sometimes we create an entire network of computers that is nothing really but an array of different kinds of disks or storage devices, and they are designed just for storage. We give them their own subnet, and we put all these together to make it look like one big disk, and then we divvy it out, and the various computers on the LAN look like they're connected to a disk on the SAN. So in other words, I allocate so much space to computer A over here, and computer A thinks that that space is actually attached to itself. It looks like a physical drive to that computer, but it's really a piece of this SAN that I have allocated to that computer. it can get rather complex, but we call those SANs, or Storage Area Network. Don't confuse those, by the way, with NAS, or Network Attached Storage, which is different and not the topic of this particular case. But in this case, the Storage Area Network, all of those devices are on a network of their own, on a subnet of their own.